Welcome back to the Pain Changer podcast. This is episode 42. In previous episodes, we discussed diet and other lifestyle changes that can help you. I can't talk today. In previous episodes, we discussed diet and other lifestyle changes that you can make to help you lower your pain. There is another type of diet that was new to me anyway, that I have totally overlooked. This diet has been scientifically proven to increase the health of your body, lower inflammation, lower blood sugar, increase mental acuity. I don't know about you, but that's something I work on every day, and reduce symptoms of chronic diseases. Today's guest was a no-brainer for me to invite to the show. He is the first person who introduced me to the benefits of this type of diet, and I would be remiss if I didn't introduce him to you so that you can benefit from his knowledge too. Stay tuned, that is coming right up. I have the honor of introducing another amazing guest on this show. Katie Ruff has been a personal trainer since 2007. Katie Ruff has been a certified personal trainer since 2007. He successfully ran a metabolic testing program for a large gym and oversaw 13 programs in the West region. He has multiple certifications as a personal trainer, lifestyle coach, and performance enhancement specialist. With his nutrition coaching certifications, he specializes in low carbohydrate lifestyles, including ketogenic and carnivore diets. He has helped thousands of clients over 14 years learn how to achieve their best lifestyle through movement, lifestyle management, and proper diet. Music to my ears. Together with Bethany, they created Boundless Body LLC during the 2020 pandemic. He is the host of two podcasts, Boundless Body Radio and the How to Make a podcast. He lives in South Jordan, Utah with his wife, Bethany, and their two dogs, Rex and Tucker, and their cat, Lily. In his free time, he loves to cycle, play hockey, and paddleboard. Welcome to the Pain Changer podcast, Casey. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you so very much, Katie. It's such an honor to be here. I love your podcast. It was an honor to host you on our show, and it's so fun to be here today. I'm very honored.
Thank you so much. And just a note to people, I may sound a little bit like a boy going through puberty today. My voice has been going on and on, so we're just going to weave that into the show.
I was telling you off air, I had an episode just a few weeks ago where for whatever reason, I had no voice. It was the first time, and hosting a podcast without a voice is really, really tough. So all the best to you.
Yeah, we'll see what the voice is going to do. It just gave a little crack there.
Yep.
Well, you know what? I like to weave comedy in, so comedy is just going to come in the tune of my voice today and whatever it decides to do. So we'll
there
learn
we go.
together.
Perfect. We'll learn together. Perfect.
So tell me how you and Bethany came about Boundless Body. How did that start?
Yeah, great question. So we were both working for a large corporation, a corporation that owned lots of gyms across the country, and we worked for them. I'd worked there for 13 years. Bethany had worked there for 7 years. We met in the company a few years ago and decided to get married. She moved out to Utah, and March of 2020 hit, and there was a worldwide pandemic, and so the gyms closed down. Another thing that was really tough about that time was the program that you mentioned in the introduction that I was running is based on respirations. So if you've ever seen like a VO2 max test done, that's basically that was my program. That was my baby. I was teaching other trainers how to use those machines and interpret the data to help us assess our clients and how they were burning calories, how many calories they burned, what their VO2 max was, what their baseline metabolic rate was. So that involves like standing next to a treadmill with somebody working out very hard with concentrated respirations through a mask. So that program was already shut down before even the gym was shut down. So right off the bat, like we were in a really tough situation. We got placed on unemployment. My program had ended for who knows how long. And, when the gym called us back to come back to work, they wanted us to be back on 100% commission right off the bat. And, 100% commission is tough in 2019. Like you have to really scrap as a personal trainer to find people, to find leads, to provide services, give away tons of free stuff, free services, all the seminars we did, all the weight loss program. Like we would, but it was nice because we had people coming to that central location. It was a big gym with lots of amenities. So we had people that had, income to spend on things like personal training. Well, that all ended. The thing I'll kind of say to people is like, before the pandemic, like the game of basketball was on like a rectangle court and there was 5-on-5 and those were the rules and here's the ball and basket. Well, the pandemic just shook up all the rules, and now like basketball will be played on ice and there's 20 players on each team, and now we're playing with a football or whatever. Like the rules had changed, behaviors had changed. Our clients were not driving to the business complex where the gym was to begin with. They didn't want to go back to a gym and start working out indoors anyway. This is like May of 2020. This was like really early on. And you know what? They found that they could use their equipment that they already had, dust off all the, Thigh Masters they had laying around and whatever bands they had. And so we noticed that people's behaviors were changing and weren't that likely to go back. And so for us, it was a financial thing, but also we just decided, like, why don't we start our own business? We can continue working with people in different ways, maybe outside or maybe in their open spaces. We can train them remotely through Zoom, and we train people with water bottles and on banisters of stairs and in garages and basements. And we had to get really creative. We built our basement to be a gym and a Pilates studio, and a place where my wife Bethany works with pain relief. She works specifically with tissue work and helping people, get more space in their myofascial tissue. And that's where we came up with Boundless Body. Bethany had the idea to name it Boundless Body. I was on board immediately. I thought it was a great name and really encompass what we believe can be a healthy life and lifestyle, unbound to, the things that hold us down and hold us back, which what you well understand of anybody and listeners to the show. And that's how Boundless Body was born. And we've been really fortunate. We, kept a lot of the same clients that we were training before, and we've been able to grow the podcast or grow the business in a way that's been really a great experience. It's been a lot of, sweat, blood, and tears, but it's been really fun.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that story. And I love the idea of the boundless body, right? Because these things that we put on ourselves, they're limits, they bind us. And so this idea of boundless, like, oh, what is possible?
Yeah.
Just by tapping into the body in different ways, which is exactly what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with Bethany's work, watching people come in with severe pain that they've had sometimes for decades. And they've worked with the chiropractors and the physical therapists and had the medications and the surgeries and the cortisone shots and all this stuff. And it's not to downplay any of that, but she can get people out of pain in very few sessions. It doesn't take generally a long time for her to have somebody tell her, like, wow, I don't really need you anymore. I feel amazing. I am unbound. I'm boundless. And so, yeah, I think it fit what we were trying to go after.
Yeah, I love that. And I was reading your site and saw the results that she's getting in some of these methods she's using. I'd love to have a chat with her sometime, but we can talk about that after.
Yeah, great. She's great to talk to. She's much more interesting than I am.
Well, that'll remain to be seen. I'm sure you're both awesome and have your own fields of expertise within this boundless body. It sounds like you guys are a great fit.
Yeah, we definitely do.
So I want to actually go right into the diet question. So ketogenic diets are something I've heard of for several years. I think pretty much everybody's heard of going keto at this point. And I know people who have done keto and they've had amazing results. But the carnivore diet is a new one for me, because I had always been taught that animal fat is inflammatory. But now I know that's not necessarily true. It may be more what the animals are eating versus the animal itself. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about this and why the carnivore diet is so beneficial?
Yeah, absolutely. So trust me, I know how weird this all will sound if this is the first time you've heard this. I was listening to a podcast, an episode of Joe Rogan back in probably 2017, 2018. I'd just been certified in nutrition coaching. And so I've got the textbook that is behind me that tells me everything, I need to know about nutrition and how to balance whole grains and fruits and vegetables and lean meats and what kind of fats to choose and how many calories to eat and all that kind of stuff. And I hear this episode of Joe Rogan with a doctor, Sean Baker is his name, and he's in his 50s and he is completely ripped, and he's setting world records in rowing competitions, like indoor rowing and deadlifts, like crushing it. Yeah. And I'm listening to this guy and I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. But then he starts to talk about how he only eats meat. Like literally his only food is ribeye. Whoa. He has ribeye and salt and water, and has been doing that for a good long time at that point, and is sitting there saying that he feels amazing. He's got great energy. He doesn't need to sleep nearly as much as he used to. So I'm already thinking this is crazy. And the point where I jumped off of that conversation is when Dr. Baker said that he didn't believe that blood work was the absolute best thing to go off of when you're assessing somebody's health. And at the time, like my gym was selling a lot of blood work and we were trying to interpret lots of blood work. And I had done several years where I was doing lipid panels on people and testing cholesterol and triglycerides. And I understand what a quagmire, understood at the time what a quagmire blood work can be because it's so complex and complicated. But when this doctor said that he puts way less value in blood work than he used to, that was too much for me. I turned it off. I could not get on board with that. Absolutely not. This guy's nuts for sure. And I kind of just let it slip away. But at that time, we were doing weight loss contests where people were, they weren't following our normal advice. They weren't listening to me when I was saying, like, eat these balanced meals, make sure you balance out your carbohydrates. We had one guy in particular. He was an employee of the gym that was doing a weight loss contest that we were doing. And I listened to his diet and he just was eating a ton of carbohydrates, like kind of like wake up in the middle of the night and have a bowl of cereal type thing. Oh. Yeah, he was just always hungry. He wasn't eating any fat, so he was never satiated. He never felt really full. He needed to eat all the time, which means your blood sugars are just very misregulated. Your insulin levels are going to be elevated. And so I just told him in our initial, connecting session, like, just get some more fat in your diet and see what happens. And he came back to me 2 days later and said, like, okay, well, I just lost 2 pounds in 2 days. What's this keto stuff? And so that sent me down the keto loophole. And by going down the keto loophole, which is a low carbohydrate or what some people call a very low carbohydrate diet, I started to encounter more people that were talking about a no carbohydrate diet. They were eating 0 carbohydrates, yet they were thriving and they were feeling really good and they were curing chronic disease and fixing acute issues they were having. And I started to listen a little bit more. I started to kind of listen to their stories and the things that they were saying. And it was fantastical. Like, none of it made any logical sense. Yet these people are like reverse aging. They feel like they're getting younger. The older the chronological they get, their skin issues that they've had their entire life, psoriasis, rosacea, whatever, goes away just magically. Sun tolerance increases. I started hearing people tell me, like, all of a sudden my feet that always used to burn are now tanning perfectly. And I can be hours in the sun and I never get a burn. And it's like gut issues for sure. I heard tons of people that had IBS, IBD, leaky gut, and all kinds of misregulated issues with the gut. And I'm thinking, like, okay, these people need to be eating fiber. Like, how are they doing? And they're not eating fiber. They're eating 0 fiber, and not for like a week on this diet, for like a year or 10 years, like decades for some people. And so I wanted to research it more. I loved meat anyway. And I just thought, like, okay, I guess I can see what happens. So it was April of 2019. I do what a lot of carnivores do, which is a 30-day test. Let's just try this out. I probably won't poop in 30 days. I might die of a heart attack from a cholesterol poisoning, but let me just try it and see what happens. And I couldn't believe the difference between going on from a low carbohydrate or ketogenic diet, even though it had low carbohydrates, to eliminating those carbohydrates altogether. And in 30 days, I did not want to get off. I felt so good and had so much energy and so much less anxiety. That was it for me. And I've had varying levels of strictness in the last 3.5 years of being on a carnivore diet. But I can say that by my definition of carnivore, I have been carnivore for the 3.5 years that I've done it. I have 0 intention of going off of it. And I seriously, personally don't know any other person that's tried a carnivore diet that ever would think to go back to eating a massive amount of plants. So that was kind of my introduction into the world of the carnivore diet. As far as the carnivore diet itself, as a basic definition, it really means that you're eating exclusively animal products. The definition that I like of a hypercarnivore is somebody that eats 75% of their calories from animal products. So that gives people some wiggle room to have some plant products. Some people are very strict on carnivore, like the doctor I was saying, Dr. Sean Baker, who really he only eats meat. There's several people that are strict like that and they only eat red meat and they feel great. There's other people that can include things like coffee is a really common one, safer plant foods like avocados or maybe some fruit here and there or some honey, which is debatable whether that's a carnivore food or not. But a carnivore diet is eating mostly animal products. And, after being in this world for a while and doing our podcast and talking to experts on many levels, archaeologists, anthropologists, people that know our anatomy, people that know our biology and our evolution, people that know how our brains got to be where they are and our guts are shaped the way they are and why we have such a high pH in our stomach. Like talking to all of these experts from so many different levels has really helped me to understand that this is not a fad. This is not a fad diet. This is not the thing that you see in the grocery store on the cover that says keto and it's got, the chocolate snacks that you can make that are low carbohydrate. This is the proper human diet. And I truly believe that every species of animal has a diet that they should be eating, and you don't see them deviate. You don't see sharks eat kale. You don't see koalas eat a vast amount of vegetation. They eat very specific foods. And as humans, I believe we are evolved specifically to eat meat, and mostly meat. I think that plant foods can be survival foods. And if we need them, and if they are prepared properly and dealt with carefully, they can be consumed as well. But I don't think that they should be the primary food in the diet. And I don't think it's even very debatable to think that anything other than that would be the truth. So I'll start with that. A lot of people are probably thinking I've got a second head growing out of my shoulders, and I can certainly empathize because I felt the same way.
Well, you're on a podcast where I encourage people to talk to their body and get messages from it and do all sorts of weird shit. So weird is kind of allowed here.
Awesome.
And you're also backing everything you're saying with science. So there's a few things that you've said, Casey, that I want to go back to, actually, not really in the order that you said them. I want to start with being careful on plants. Can you expand on that? What do you mean? You had already said a safe plant like an avocado. What else is a safe plant? What is the difference between a safe plant and a plant that may not be as safe?
That is a great question. Very fair question. Animals have been around for millions of years. We've been humans for kind of debated, a few million years, probably. Homo sapien, probably like 200,000, somewhere in there. Plants have been around a lot longer. They were kind of the evolution of the original life forms. And we as humans, we have a very entitled approach to life. We think we can tear apart the earth and harvest everything that we need, all the minerals we can mine, all the things that we can make. And we just kind of have this weird interaction with our planet. And part of that is our interaction with plants. We think that plants were put here for us to consume and eat. And actually, that's really not true. Plants have the same goal that we do. They want to stay alive. They don't want to get eaten. They don't want to die. They want to have babies. They want to spread those babies around the world as much as possible and live. And because of that, and the way that plants are different than animals, they don't have the ability to run away. They don't have the ability to fight off predation, except for they have developed over the course of billions of years, lots of plant toxins, chemicals, phytotoxins that cause things like insects and small rodents to stop eating that plant. They can make insects die. They can make small rodents be really sick. And they have those chemicals in them. Now, the cool thing about humans, I got this from a doctor that we've interviewed several times, named Dr. Bill Schindler, an awesome guy to look up. And he talks a lot about this in his book, Eat Like a Human. And his case as an anthropologist is humans actually are not really good at eating anything that we eat. We are not designed to eat food. We have really weak and pathetic kind of digestive systems and mouth systems to eat the foods that we eat, plant or animal. Like, we don't look like carnivores. We don't look like herbivores. We're just kind of like weirdly in the middle. And the difference in humans is we have developed technology that helps us unlock nutrients in our foods that make them more safe and more accessible. So, for example, part of being human is controlling fire, whether that's to cook our food or to have fire to scare away other predation. That's part of our evolution that allowed us to unlock the calories in certain foods, especially animal products, and made them more calorie rich. That's what helped make our brain grow, which is really nice. With plants, again, you're going to be dealing with some load of toxins. Every plant has toxins. Every part of plant has toxins. And, they can be phytates or lectins, or oxalates is a really big one. Salicylates, histamines, you name it. There's all chemicals that are building up in the foods that plants have. Now, again, as humans, we develop technologies to be able to get past those toxins. So, for example, most potatoes that are wild and grown, in South America, you can't eat them. You will die. Like, literally, they're too poisonous to die. But indigenous populations have understood that if you cook them, if you soak them, a lot of people will eat them with a certain kind of clay that binds to those toxins and makes them an edible food. our grandparents knew, like when you had vegetables, they were typically cooked, or if you had potatoes, the skin was typically removed. And we just kind of have moved away from that because we're being blasted with this message that the plant-based movement is the very best for our health and the very best for the planet and is ethically the best thing to do. And it's really just not the case. So safer plant foods would be the parts of the plant that are not related to its reproduction, essentially. Fruits are a really good example. So a fruit is the part of the plant that is bright. Ubiquitously, it tastes good. Everybody loves fruit, and
Yes.
it contains seeds. And if you eat that fruit, what's going to happen is those seeds are going to pass right through you. If you've ever eaten fruit seeds, you know that happens. You don't digest them. That is on purpose. The plant does that knowingly. And the plant knows that you're going to go somewhere and poop out manure and some seeds that's going to grow a new tree. So plants willingly give you those types of things without much of a cost. They might have some toxins, but definitely much lower than other parts of the plants. The vegetable would be the other parts of the plant. So now we're talking about the leaves, the stems, the stalks, the roots, especially the seeds. Those are going to be highly fortified with plant chemicals that can build up in your body. And the plant does that very knowingly through its evolution in this arms race that we have, so that less predation gets at the vegetation and vice versa. So that's what we mean when we say that some plants are safer than others. And that's also what we mean when we say we have to deal with our plants very carefully and mindfully. We can't just go and take leaves and stems and stalks from whatever plant we want all the time and think it's not going to have an effect, because it will. It takes time, which is the big problem. Is the plant toxins build up and build up and build up, and that could take years or decades. And so that's a lot different than having a milkshake with tons of sugar and having your sugar crash 30 minutes later. You notice an immediate effect. With plant toxins, they tend to build up over a longer time.
That's a really good point to make. And this is all really fascinating to me. I love learning about food from a different perspective. And it just goes to show, again, there's no silver bullet. There's no one solution in there. Everybody's going to be a little different. So some of the examples of plants that would be less safe, like nightshades is something I hear about that has a lot of the seeds. Those are vegetables like eggplants, peppers. Those tend to be inflammatory. I actually have a friend who is allergic to them and gets a rash on her skin if she eats them. She loves tomatoes. She loves tomato sauce. She can't eat it. It literally, her body reacts to it.
Yep.
So what would you say for someone who is stuck in the ethical conundrum of like, oh, I shouldn't eat an animal because it's an innocent animal? It's like, well, the plant is just as innocent. And like you said, it has the same purpose, and everything on earth is here to survive. And they've actually, I came across an article last week on the Good News Network that they've actually been able to show that plants breathe. They are taking in the carbon dioxide in the air. Like they've got, I forgot what they're called, like biomes. No, that's not the right word. Some part of it, but it looks so cool under this massive microscope. It looked like the plant actually had a little green mouth and it was just taking it in. So would you say anything for anyone? Because I've had that ethical conundrum myself, and I've landed on what feels mostly okay with me, but I'm curious what your answer is.
Pardon my French, plants are fucking amazing. They are so cool. They are alive. They are sentient beings. They talk to each other. They work in community. One of the authors we interviewed, Leah Keith, she wrote the book, The Vegetarian Myth. She was hardcore vegetarian vegan for 20 years. And she describes it as being like, you know what? I always knew plants were alive. I talk to plants. I see them. And she said that by where she lives, the redwood trees that collect water, they collect it using their needles, but they only use about 30% of the water. The rest of it is shared with the other plants underneath. So everybody benefits. That's how plants work. They're absolutely incredible. So they are alive. They are sentient. And I'll answer your question. I just want to point out that the vegan and plant-based kind of argument is really in three prongs. So we have to kind of talk about them in three different boxes, because if you have an argument with somebody who's not willing to address those things separately, the conversation will just change drastically. It'll be about health, and it'll be about ethics, and it'll be about planetary health. So it goes everywhere. So the first part is that plants are the healthiest food that you could eat. I think that comes in two different arguments. And I'll say that Animal products are the most healthy and most bioabsorbable form of nutrition that we can get. So first argument is that animal products are actually physically very good for you. And the second part of the argument is not even necessarily that plants are good for you. It's not necessarily that they're neutral and they're okay. I'm telling people that plants are actively bad for you. They are causing harm. So that's that side of thing of the health. Ethics is a tough one. It is really tough. I don't know of anybody, even on this diet, that would say they want to cause harm to animals. Nobody does. We love our animals. We have pets that we absolutely love. You know, it's something to really examine. The thing is, with the ethical concerns of killing animals, people that think that they're eating a vegetarian or plant-based diet feel like they've got no hand in the killing of animals. And I have to just say that the destructive nature of agriculture is huge. And to raise any kind of plant, animals have to die, period. Big animals, small animals, insects, you know, the bacteria that we you know, till every single year and destroy our own, you know, the soil, like that's getting destroyed. So my question, first of all, is like, where do you want to draw the line of which animals you want to kill? Are you okay with killing 100 squirrels in a field that's getting plowed over that we're harvesting? Or are you okay with killing one cow that's going to be food for a year for you? So death is happening all over the place. It's not fun to think about. It hurts our ego. We don't want to think about our own death, and we don't want to think about that our sustenance, our nutrition is causing death or harm in any way. And it sucks to make the realization that if you are going to live, things are going to die, period. There is no free lunch. And if you want to argue with that, go turn on the Discovery Channel, watch a nature show. Everything is eating everything,
Yep.
and dying in horrible ways all the time. And we just say, oh, well, that's part of nature. And so the ethical argument, it's tough because people love plants and animals. We've got this, people call it like the Disney effect of like, we watch these movies with these adorable characters. And now, you know, Bambi has this face and we can relate to that face. And so it's mostly, you know, people in the plant-based world, they have a really tough time with the big animals dying because, again, they've got the face and we can relate. But you know, you ask them about, okay, what happens when you run a combine through that field? You're killing everything, all the plants, all the animals. Those animals are condensing through this field and getting more and more into this one little area, which is why they say the last few acres is absolutely the worst and is traumatic for people that have to drive those combines. It's a killing machine. You're killing all the animals that made their homes in those plants. That blood comes on those plants. So again, it's uncomfortable. It sucks. I don't like it. I'm not a hunter. I don't kill my own animals. I respect the people that do. And they say, a lot of them, it's really hard. It's tough. But if you want to live, something's going to die. So that's what I would say on the ethical side of that argument.
And that's a really good point. That is nature. Everything is on the food chain somewhere. If you're at the bottom of the food chain, you're not going to last as long. You know, if you're at the top of the food chain, you're going to last longer. A great example of that, and we don't care until it directly affects us. So for instance, I had a bald eagle that was stalking my cats.
Wow.
No joke, stalking my cats. My cats are now indoor cats because I'm not willing to sacrifice them. So a giant yet gorgeous bald eagle will live through the winter because I'm very attached to my cat, and his fluffy little tum-tum is my favorite part. And that's what the eagle goes for first. And just no part of me can handle that. But I understand that that's the cycle of life.
Yeah.
The eagle doesn't give a shit that it's my cat. The eagle is hungry. It's winter. And my cat is an 18-pound snack.
Yep. That's right. That's right. No,
he's about 15.5 pounds right now, but it's still a very good snack. And so he's just not being served up on a platter right now.
Yeah. That on the one hand, it would have been very patriotic. Like totally, that would have been patriotic for the bald eagle to eat the cat. But yes, exactly. Things have to eat, and to have that happen, things need to die. And so again, it's former vegans that we interview say it was nice. It was a nice concept because it fit all of those different boxes that we talked about. And I knew I was growing my own food. I wasn't killing animals. I'll give another, this is just kind of funny example from the same person we've already talked about, Leah Keith. She describes when she was, she was hardcore vegan and she could not kill anything. So as part of her journey, she decided, okay, well, if I'm going to eat plants, I need to grow my own plants. So she had a horrible time, like trying to figure out, what is she going to use for fertilizer because she wasn't using animal products, wasn't using bone meal. She kind of got through that with like different minerals and stuff that she added to her garden, but she started with lettuce and she would plant these starts of baby lettuce. And she described the middle of the night and a virtual army of slugs would come and eat all the starts of lettuce. They love this stuff. So she'd wake up the next day and be like, well, I got to go buy new starts. And like 5 or 6 times she went back and planted new lettuce starts. And sure enough, all the snails kept coming back. All the slugs kept coming back. So she's like, what am I going to do? So the one idea was to take the slugs and move them to a different area. And she dropped them off in another forest and then realized like, well, that forest already had as many slugs as it was already going to support anyway. These ones are going to be food regardless. And the slugs ended up coming back anyway. So then she decided, okay, well, I could use diatomaceous earth, which is like really rough and will like shred up these slug stomachs. But I'm telling you, she was so averse to harming any kind of nature. She didn't want to do that either. So she landed on little beer traps I guess they're like humans. Slugs love beer. And she thought, well, at least they'll drink the beer. They get drunk. They apparently drown in the beer. And at least these ones will like be happy when they die.
Yeah.
Wakes up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat and is like, I can't do this. So she pitched the beer. She gave up on the gardening idea. The next day she went to the store and she, with a huge amount of relief, bought a head of lettuce. And she said, thank God I don't have to do the killing. Like, this is great. And then it hit her like a ton of bricks. And she said it was the first time in her life that she felt like an adult. And the thought that came to her was, who am I kidding? Who am I kidding? If I am buying this lettuce, somebody killed all the slugs and everything else to grow this lettuce. Like, everything comes at a cost. And she couldn't unlearn what she had already learned and seen herself. And she stayed vegetarian and vegan for a while, but with that understanding of like, yeah, the ethical concern is a real one, but if you're going to live, something has to die.
Yeah. And that's very true. And the way that I've been able to deal with that, there's a difference between mass-produced animals and those who have been ethically raised and fed with more natural products versus steroids, additives, etc. So I try to stay towards the ethically raised, the grass-fed, the ones that are eating whole foods, whole plants. And as a side note, that this was a fact I learned on Yellowstone, and she was right, that everything else that eats all plants, like cows, have 4-chambered stomachs. We do
That's
not.
right.
We are not meant to digest that many plants.
Yeah.
We're just not. We are not meant to be fully vegetable. And anytime I tried to be vegetarian, my mom would always go, you got 2 types of teeth, Kate. It's because it's 2 types of food you should be eating, meat and vegetables.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That's another thing. If you look at the structure of our anatomy, like people say like, oh, we have flat teeth, we should be plant eaters. Like, we don't have flat teeth. We have molars. You can't, if you close your jaw and try to rub your jaw, your teeth side to side, they don't really go, like they don't move. That's not the same as an animal that eats only plants and uses that as a grindstone. The stomachs that they have are fermenters. They change all the carbohydrate and cellulose in their stomachs into short chain fatty acids. So a lot of people don't even realize that cows actually run on fat too. They just have the ability to take it from grass, which we have no ability to deal with. No. Their stomach pH is totally different. They've got a much higher stomach pH than we do. Ours is very low. It's actually at the level of a scavenger. It's even below what a true carnivore stomach pH is. Where you would ferment plants is in the large intestine. We have a very small large intestine relative to the small intestine, which is really long and absorbs all the fats and proteins. So you're right. We're just simply not set up to do that. And I'll just say one more thing on the ethical side. I was fortunate enough to buy a quarter cow from a rancher who lives in Nevada at the state next to me. And, small time guy, they just started raising beef, but he was so nice and genuine. I hosted him on the show and got to ask him some of these questions. He's not an expert on ethics. He's not an expert on planetary health or human health. I just wanted anecdote from a rancher. What is your life like? Is your farm destroying the planet with all kinds of cow farts? You're probably barely able to breathe down there. And he described to me what he called cow heaven. Like, these cows live on grass. They run every single day to a new paddock of grass. He doesn't even need to like push them on. They're going around pooping everywhere. So they're actually building topsoil and sequestering carbon back into the earth. These guys have amazing lives, and they grow up with this family and these kiddos. The cows have names. I saw pictures of little calves in the bathroom in the wintertime, and the kids hugging them, and they're playing around in the water while the cows are, drinking out of the water bins. And they have somebody come to their farm once a year, and he harvests the animals that are ready to be harvested. And it's a completely pain-free death. So these cows live a wonderful life, always being taken care of with other cows, very social and beautiful. And they have one bad moment that is completely painless, and that's it. And that food, again, that quarter cow, that's my food for a very, very long time. And so what's better, what's worse? Like, I chose the one life that had the great life, and I've got food for a really long time. So that's the way I make my choice. So
I love that. And I'm really big on energy, and I'm also super sensitive. So that really matters in my food. If the animal has had, like, and this may sound crazy too, but we've already talked about crazy shit. This has only happened like once or twice, but I ate chicken that had not had an ethical death, that had not had a painless death. And I had anxiety for the entire time I digested it.
Wow.
But then I started to, I don't do it regularly, but after this podcast, I'm going to, because I feel so much better when I do. I actually thank the animal that I'm going to eat. Thank you so much for sacrificing your body. And more than once I've heard, "You're welcome." I'm like, okay, cool.
I love that. I love that. Again, with all the former vegetarians and vegans that we have interviewed, I've asked them specifically that question, like, how do you feel now versus how you were feeling before when you were eating lots of plants? Do you feel as grateful, less grateful, more grateful? And across the board, and in my case in particular, my appreciation for my food is through the roof. I am so grateful that this life was taken care of and got to live and is now sustaining me and my family. And I didn't feel that when I was eating a lot of plants. And I hear that across the board.
Same. I know a lot of people who were hardcore vegan, vegetarian, their health started to take a slip, and they started to go back to meat for whatever reason, and exactly the same thing. And I know it's a real thing. I'm not bashing anybody who's a vegetarian or vegan who isn't at that place yet. I'm just asking you to open your mind, hear what we're saying today, and potentially see what may be a better fit for you to increase your health, to lower any pain that you're dealing with at the same time.
Yep, agreed. I couldn't have said it better myself. There are ways that we can raise food, plants, and animals in a regenerative and sustainable way. And however you choose to get there, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways. It's very easy to find ethically sourced meat. They've got places like Butcher Box. I think it's one of those that delivers nationally.
Agreed.
And it's all ethically raised, grass-fed, some of the top of the line meat. It's more expensive, but I mean, everything's expensive these days. It's kind of relative.
And it's like, and the expensive thing I'll say is like, okay, well, what car are you driving? Like, how big is your house? Like, are you truly valuing the fuel that you're putting in your body, or do you have a lot of stuff laying around? So I like it when people try to reallocate what they think is expensive and not.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great point. It's okay. Like, and also, all right, you can pay for a healthier diet now, or you can pay for extra medical bills, extra deductibles, extra tests, extra all that later, and also pay with your quality of life.
Yep, 100%.
Because now you're suffering because you're not healthy because you cheaped out on your diet.
Yep, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Very well said.
We're going to pay somewhere, somehow, some form. So why not pay in the way that feels the best to you and not the default payment because you ran out of choices?
Yeah, so well said. I love that.
So you had said something. I want to go back to this again, and I want to ask directly some of the results you've seen with clients since you've been on this carnivore diet and really not pushing, but really advocating. Advocating is a much better positive term. Advocating for the carnivore and zero carb lifestyle. So you had mentioned from that first doctor, that there were some shortcomings in blood work, and that's not the first time I've heard that. I'd had a guest previously that came on and talked about being your own health advocate, and that blood tests are only measuring something at a point in time that may or may not actually go into the needle. And so the blood is not. And so one of the things she recommended was a Dutch test.
Cool.
So I'm curious, like what are the tests that you would recommend so people can start to get, or are you comfortable recommending that?
1,000% comfortable recommending it without any kind of tests or assessments. Good example, like take a picture of the freeway and assess what traffic is like, but I'm not going to tell you the day or the time that picture was taken. You really have no idea what is actually going on all the time. And there's so many complex interactions with different markers and different things. Plus the goalposts are always moving. Like they're always changing markers for acceptable levels of LDL cholesterol, which we can go down the cholesterol rabbit hole too, if you want. That's such a joke. But yeah, like it's hard to tell what we're looking for, what's really relevant and important. I think there's some markers that are better than others. I think other tests, like a Dutch test, I believe it's taken several points, right, to collect all the data, I think is like much better. Yeah, yep. 5 times. Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think those are better tools than anything, frankly. And I'm not making this up. I think the best tool that you can have for health is like your girth circumference. So if you took a piece of string, go invest yourself in a piece of string, measure out your height on that string. And if your waist size across your belly button is more than half of what your height is, you have metabolic issues that could be worked on and improved. Frankly, I think that's the best marker. And I've used them all. I have a body fat scale. We've done blood work. We've done cortisol test, binaural testing there. Like we've done all the assessments and tests. And frankly, like a piece of string is probably going to tell you everything you need to know. Client results. So yeah, I am fortunate that I'm not the one that's standing at the plant-based store down the street, like protesting people that are harming the oranges or whatever, like stop hurting the kale. I don't have to do that. I'm a coach for a company that promotes meat-based and animal-based diets and the carnivore diet. And so people reach out to me, and it's people that, they're not there to like pick fights like people on my Twitter or like on my YouTube always do.
Right.
They're there because they want to learn. And people that go to a carnivore diet or even think about it, it's really important to point out they have suffered in some form or another. I don't know of hardly anybody that just said, oh, eating all meat, that sounds super fun. I'm going to do that for the rest of my life, or I'm going to do that for a period of time. People have been through hell. They have generally tried the standard American diet. They have generally tried a vegetarian or vegan diet. It had failed them in many different ways. Maybe they've tried ketogenic diets. Maybe they've tried paleo diets, and maybe they've noticed some improvement by adding animal products back in, but they're hearing these stories of people, again, with the gut issues and the skin issues and the sun tolerances, and the mental clarity is a huge one. Like they're seeing all these benefits, and they want to know how to do it right. So when we are eating a species appropriate diet, we run at an optimal level. Everything gets better. And I have witnessed this over and over and over again, to the point that it doesn't surprise me anymore when somebody says, wow, like I had floaters in my eyes, like my vision was getting worse, and I don't have them anymore. Or they say like, yeah, I couldn't tolerate digestion. I was so bloated. One guest I interviewed this week said she had constipation so bad, she didn't know that it wasn't normal to only poop every like 3 weeks. And they were jamming more fiber and more medications down her throat. Oh my gosh. Carnivore saved her life. Like that's what people come to carnivore for. They have suffered greatly through health. They're not doing this to be anti-vegan. They're doing this because they have gone through the ringer. So really easy ones right off the bat that I see as far as results go are weight loss and fat loss. Once you are eating exclusively fats and proteins, your body will burn off excessive amounts of carbohydrate, which you don't have very much of anyway, and then it will start to relearn how to burn fat. And that's one of the biggest benefits. When we eat carbohydrates, we have a hormone called insulin, which tells the body that we have energy incoming and it needs to go into storage. Let's go back to the fruit analogy that we talked about. Like when plants give you fruit, I'm looking at a tree right now. First of all, it's not a fruit tree. I know of like 2 or 3 fruit trees that are even in my neighborhood, like vast neighborhood here in Salt Lake City. There's a shockingly low amount of edible plants that you see on any natural landscape. Like we took a trip to South Carolina not too long ago, and it's lush and warm, and there's not plants growing everywhere that are edible. They would kill you if you ate them. Anyway, you think about the apple tree, we say, okay, the fruits are more beneficial. They're also very seasonal. So this special time of year, the end of summer, the early part of fall, all of these fruits start coming up and you can eat them. What happens is insulin goes up, which tells your body like, wow, we got sugar. We love sugar. Sugar always tastes good. It's the best. Save this, because the body knows we are going to go into a time where it's winter. I can walk around outside in the snow, which I'm not going to do because it's way too cold. And I am not going to find, even on that same apple tree, I'm not going to find fruit. Those plants are very seasonal in different parts of the planet. So that's the problem with insulin, and the problem with carbohydrates has nothing to do with the carbohydrates and insulin. This is a super helpful system that helps us save energy so we can burn energy through the wintertime. The problem is we made carbohydrates super accessible year round, and nobody even thinks about the fact that they can walk into any grocery store on the planet virtually at any time and buy an apple. And they don't consider like, where did this apple come from? When did this apple come from? Most people don't realize apples are already a year old by the time they get to the store. Like they were picked a long time ago. It's true. They call them birthday apples in the industry. And so the problem with the insulin carbohydrate thing, it's just exposure. We just have way too much exposure. And we're talking about apples. We're not talking about the processed crap that you can find in the middle part of a grocery store, or even worse than that, all the stuff that people are getting Grubhub. They're not even getting in their car and driving to fast food anymore. You can have it delivered through your phone, easy. That is where we have a misregulation of insulin. Insulin becomes way too high over time, and that's why we have an explosion of obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, all these other dementia-related diseases, which are now being proven to be metabolic. Cancer is a metabolic disease. Cancer cells thrive on sugar and carbohydrates. So one of the biggest benefits of eliminating the carbohydrates is only eat the fats and proteins. Now the insulin can settle down and go low, and now you access all of the fat you've already stored. It's just you're living your winter that you were saving up for, in some cases, your entire life. So weight loss and fat loss is a big one. The brain really prefers to run a majority of its energy on ketones, which your body makes when it's burning fat. So a lot of people report higher brain energy, brain fog goes away, needing to nap goes away. I definitely noticed that. My anxiety went down to the tank. I don't get anxious anymore where I used to. I don't deal with stress the same way that I used to. That's really common with my clients. We mentioned the skin, the gut issues. I mean, those are kind of the big ones. It's really, I don't know of any part of people's lives that doesn't improve on this diet. And I've seen a lot of people go through this, and a very diverse crowd of people. Like at this point, I don't think there's many downsides.
That everything you just said is so fascinating, including the cancer and sugar feeding it. And I think it was your podcast. It was either your podcast or someone else's that I was listening to, of their mother going through breast cancer for 7 years. Was that you?
That was me. Yeah, that was my mom. Yeah.
Yeah, that story is like, oh my, and you said that she wanted those apple ciders from Starbucks. So there you are bringing her into chemo, and unbeknownst to any of you, you're trying to kill the cancer molecule and feed it at the same time. You knew you were killing it. You didn't know you're feeding it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best ways that we can even locate cancer in our bodies is by sugary drinks. It's a PET scan. Like that, you take in a sugary drink and see where it goes. Cancer cells basically revert their metabolism. You know, they don't use oxygen even in the presence of oxygen, which is weird. We use oxygen. That's how we make our metabolism. That's how we do things with the foods that we eat, is we make energy using oxygen. It's very efficient, but we evolved to do that. Animals evolved to do that. Cancer cells revert. Something breaks in a cancer cell and it reverts, or a normal cell that makes it a broken cell, and it reverts to fermentation. So it needs sugar, and it also needs a protein called glutamine to build its kind of structure. And so, if you're high carbohydrate diet, it is not going to go well. I had a front row seat to that with my mom, and saw all the suffering and treatments that she had to go through while we were doing everything that we were told to eat a low fat diet that was free of cholesterol and lots of margarine, and white bread, and Twizzlers were great because they were fat free. And her cancer was really poor. And I know at this point, and have spoken with experts around the world that have either cured their own cancer, if you want to use the word cure, their cancer went away. Like it goes away, and you can do safer treatments that are not chemotherapy, that are not radiation. Not telling people not to do those things, but there are different things that you can do. And one of them is just eliminate sugar. If you told me I had cancer today, I would water fast for 7 days, and I could be even more abstinent to carbohydrate than I am now. I would never touch it ever.
Well, the chance of you even getting cancer with the amount that you take care of your body is slim to none.
You hope so. You really hope so.
And I want to preface this next fact, and I'm using air quotes since my podcast is non-video. There is a video version of this that we will put in the show notes as well, though. But I have not done my own research on this, so I cannot validate the level of truth around it. But I wonder if you've heard this as well. But somewhere along the line of industrialization, when we started to do agricultural farming and, all the things that we do to harvest large, stuff that you mentioned there, killing tons of rodents in the field, and they're part of the economy, and doing corn and wheat and all of that, we had no cancer on this planet until that time. And so that's the one I want to do more research on that. But have you heard that as well, Casey?
That is a really great question. I don't think we would ever have a way to be able to validate that one way or another. So that might be speculation. I know of many anthropologists that certainly believe that personally, based on what they've seen and what they observe in other animals. When other animals that are taken care of at the zoo and eating their species appropriate diets, they're not sick. They're really healthy and they thrive. Like, they're eating the foods that they should be eating, and they all are doing well. Like if you went to the vet at the zoo and said, what if we switch the foods around? They'd say, absolutely not. You can't feed a bear what a panda eats and vice versa. Like they have specific foods to eat and they don't get cancer. So I would be more inclined to think that was true. We had this weird change. So we gave up a lot of things. It was about 12,000 years ago. For whatever reason, in different parts of the planet, we started the cultivation of grains, and that was our domestication. We domesticated grains, and the grains in turn domesticated us. We started living in cities. We now were able to create a commodity, which is a grain. This is a storable energy source that you can keep around now all year round. So with a commodity, well, now you need governments. Now you need protection. You need military. You need land. Now becomes very, very important. This is a start of civilization. And now we're going to start fighting other people that want to take our land for resources, because you need those resources. If I'm killing one animal and sharing it with my group, there is no need for any of that. And when we look at indigenous populations that still eat the way they're supposed to eat, they don't know what time of day it is. They don't care about money. There's no need for them to take more resources than they need. They go out, they get the food they need, they share it, they sing, they dance, they don't work very hard at all. and we gave that up for, again, whatever reason, whether it was to, again, have the commodity to increase power. Some people argue that it was to ferment those carbohydrates and have alcohol. So hard to say. And again, that happened with different plants in different parts of the world, the corn thing in South America, and different grasses and wheat in kind of the Persian area, all kinds of different things in different places. I will say there is evidence in Egyptians having heart disease. And so a lot of times, since they were mummified, we've been able to go in and take a look at those mummies, and they did have heart disease. They had lesions. They did have some blockages, but people will say, like, oh, see, it's a prehistoric, people that's eating this certain way. And it's like, no, they were historic. They were eating cereal grains, a high amount of cereal grains. We could tell that they were overweight, some of them. So yeah, when we introduced grains into our diets, we did the exact wrong thing that we should have done. And we stayed on that. We stayed on that until really, and that was more of like a gradual shift that happened over time. The thing that happened like really suddenly and acutely was the Industrial Revolution. And so when we started living more in cities, we started to process and package food. That was when our food system really changed. We introduced seed oils about 100 years ago. So these are the oils extracted chemically and mechanically from seeds. So think of canola seeds, think of corn oil, what's known as vegetable oil. It's hilarious. Every vegetable oil you see in the store, rows and rows and rows of vegetable oil, not one drop comes from vegetables. Think about that. Not a single drop.
Yuck.
In Germany, they figured out how to hydrogenize these oils. So backing up, polyunsaturated fats are the liquid fats, and plants use them to protect their seeds. So
Okay.
it's not a natural fat. If you take a seed of something, you can't squeeze it and have fat. If you took an avocado, you'd squeeze it and you'd have fat oozing out of your fingers. Totally different. So we figure out how to extract these oils that were going bad, they were going rancid. Polyunsaturated fats, they go rancid very quickly with light, heat, and air. And so we invented cotton gins. So now we're making a lot more cotton, which means now we have a lot more cotton seeds. They're sitting around, they're going bad. We don't know what to do with them. So we figure out a process. Maybe we can make them into a wax for candles or, machinery, lubricant, or whatever. And we figure out hydrogenation. And in 1911, Procter & Gamble introduced to the world Crisco. Crisco stands for crystallized cottonseed, Crisco.
Ew.
Originally, it was called Christ, I think, but it looked too much like Christ, and so they backed away from that. And they were smart. Procter & Gamble has been in the nutrition game for a long time. They've been getting people to eat their products. They have been in bed, literally in bed with the American Heart Association since 1947, paid off. So the American Heart Association to this day, I'm not joking, it says that plant oils are good for you, these seed oils. And they were really smart. They knew their marketing. And so they sent the mothers in America cookbooks that said, we have this amazing white fat. It will make your cookies crisp. It will make your cakes rise. It's made in stainless steel vats. I think our dairy industry at the time was a little bit of a shit show. It was mostly in cities and there was lots of problems. So this was an alternative to that. And we started eating more of these seed oils. And we started inventing more and more of them. Canola was invented. I would encourage the listener to go on your YouTube and look up how it's made canola oil. Look that up.
Ooh.
Love the show. The how it's made show is fascinating. I used to love it. I think it's like 10 years old, how basketballs and bicycles. It's so good. You see these seeds extracted, chemicalized. It looks like sludge. It's treated with hexane, I want to say. It's bleached. It's cooked at very high temperatures, and then it's placed in this nice little plastic bottle. It's completely oxidized, which is then going to go into fry pans and fry buckets all over the country and in everybody's homes. It is completely toxic. Between that, having a lot more grains, and then also, in the 1800s, really boosting the amount of sugar that we consume. We started getting it from different sources and beets rather than just cane. So then we could have more of it and ship it around everywhere, got everybody addicted on sugar. Those things have changed very recently. And we sit around and we wonder, why have we been telling everybody to limit their saturated fat? Why are we telling people to eat margarine instead of butter? Why are we telling people that red meat is bad for us and to eat all of this processed crap several times a day that includes sugar and grains and vegetable oils? And we're surprised that her heart attacks are on the rise and is still the #1 killer in America, even though we addressed this in the 1950s. We told everybody cholesterol is bad for you. Saturated fat has cholesterol. It's bad for you. It's going to clog your arteries. It's insane. It's the craziest story. And people believe it and they try their hardest and they do it and they fail, they gain weight, and they come to us in the health industry and we tell them, wow, you're just eating too much. You're not exercising enough. Go hit the treadmill, go on a diet. And they do, and it fails, and they come back and they spend more money and they get sick and they become prescribed medications and procedures and surgeries and all of this bullshit nonsense. We changed the diet a lot. Like 100 years ago, we have a very sick society. We have a medical system that is a business. The medical system has to keep you as a customer. It needs to make sure that you're sick and has to give you those prescriptions and keep you coming back to the doctor, but it also can't kill you. Can't kill you in your 20s when we're prescribing. We need to keep you alive. And that's what we're good at. I can make sure that you will be prescribed medication from age 20 until age 90. So you have this terrible suffering life of all of these procedures, of not getting to do what you need to do. And then again, we go back and blame the foods that were the essential part of our diet for hundreds of thousands of years. It's bananas. It's absolutely crazy.
It is. And the thing that I heard there every step of the way is, step 1, someone profits. Step 2, someone profits. Step 3, someone profits. The person not profiting is the person going through hell.
It sucks.
It does. And we're trained into that shit. And it's, that's why I had an episode that diseases for profit in this country. It is insane. And I remember I got into big debate with someone around the vaccines with COVID. Everybody has their own opinion on there. I have my own opinion. I don't want to go down a vaccine path, but what it came down to, my belief came down to like, no, and I actually had the argument with my brother-in-law. I'm like, I don't trust the government. He's like, I do. I'm like, what is that like? Like, I don't even remember what it's like. It's like, oh, the government that allows smoking, which we know kills us, that allows drinking that we know kills us, that is an advocate for things that kill us, is advocating against things that help us. I saw some government-based article on how supplements don't do anything to help you. I'm like, what in the ever-loving fuck are you talking about? Like, I can feel a difference in my body taking supplements, not taking supplements. Sorry, but not sorry. You cannot tell me that my son, now, does that mean that supplements are all accurate with the ingredients that they have and you shouldn't use caution getting them? No, absolutely. Do your research. Very few supplement companies actually have the ingredients in their supplement that you actually need. Anywhere close to what they have on the label is not regulated. So you want to do your due diligence there, as you do with anything. But so much of the messaging out there is designed to move us out of ourselves, out of our health, into disease, into things that profit and hurt you while they're profiting other people. And there are no fucks to give about the toll on you, by the way.
That's right. That's right. So well said. I mean, we think the government came up with their guidelines for nutrition by consulting with like the best like nutritionists that knew what would like make a human diet. And that absolutely didn't happen. This was the McGovern, the McGovern Commission in the 1970s was started by Senator McGovern, I want to say Kansas. And it was originally to make sure that we were fixing hunger in the country. Well, we started to have like an overabundance of calories and we started making so many processed foods. We didn't really have a problem with hunger really that much anymore because people couldn't eat tons of calories. So they met for a few days. One of the senator's aides was a vegetarian and he kind of knew the most about nutrition in that kind of room. And they just like, well, we just needed something. We needed to tell the American people something. And so that's when the government started to say like, you should eat lots of fruits and vegetables. You should eat lots of whole grains. You know, eventually that morphed into other dietary guidelines like My Plate or the food pyramid. Food pyramid, 6 to 11 servings of carbohydrate every single day. Are you fucking kidding me? No, that is going to kill people. It's going to kill people. And even in 2015, not a lot of people know this. In 2015, the United States Dietary Guidelines, which are updated every 5 years, came out and said cholesterol in your diet is no longer a dietary concern. It is no longer a concern. Doesn't do anything. You don't need to worry about it. Do you think they like had a parade to talk about that? Do you think they like led the nightly news with, hey, great news. You've been lied to for 25 years by the government about cholesterol. You're fine now. You can go back to having butter and having eggs and you're going to be just fine. Like, you're right. They're not here to help you. When you eat this way, what I've noticed with myself and with all the people I work with that choose to eat this way of life, you're off the grid. You're done. You can buy your food from local farmers. You don't go to the doctor. You never go to the doctor. And the only time you go to the doctor is in the beginning. And you better choose the right one because they want to be talking about deprescribing, getting you off of medications, off of insulin, off of mental, medications if possible, like off of blood pressure meds. You have to have that. They don't go to the dentist. In fact, recently, a carnivore dentist that I know that's done carnivore diet for several years, super healthy, he put out a tweet that said, look, I'm looking for one single person who's been following carnivore that has had one cavity. Do you know of anybody? Crickets. Nobody goes, I don't go to the dentist. I never gone to this dude's a dentist. Like we're all out here like putting ourselves out of business by showing people a better way. Most people who eat carnivore, they eat once or twice a day. A typical pattern is usually like a meal around lunchtime. Some